Much. Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm going to go through today the Asta Powerproject BIM. Asta Powerproject here I have open, and I'm hoping everyone can see my screen, that we have version 13.04, which has an additional add-on option, which is the BIM module that is built into Powerproject. So what I'm going to do is, just to introduce it, I'm going to start off by creating a new project. Really get straight into the product. If I create myself a new project called Demo 123, and I'm not going to worry about dates at the moment, it's more about the BIM side at the moment I'm looking at. So here I have a standard Asta Powerproject file created, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my BIM tab, and in the BIM tab I can go to Configuration, and in here I can choose my model IFC files. So Asta Powerproject uses the IFC standard files for its models, as it's a generic format that can be used across multiple platforms and multiple systems. We will work happily with IFC 2.3 and IFC 4. So just to show you here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, select a new IFC model, and in here I have several models in that one. Let's just go to this one. I have one model here, and this is just a very simple model that I've chosen. Now, this model has been exported from Revit, but you could obviously use ArchiCAD and other systems to export. And in the properties of this, here you can see it's got a latest revision. Now, just to deal with revisions at this point here, obviously when you're using 3D models, you will get new models issued by designers and CAD teams all the time, and clients. So what you can do in here is you bring in your initial model, as I've done here, and I can go into Model Properties, and I can choose Manage Revisions, and I can choose to bring in these the revisions of the model. Now at the moment I'm demonstrating, I'm going through local IFC files, but we also have a BIM cloud that allows you to store the files centrally and bring them down from the cloud, allowing you to grant access to your designers and CAD teams to work with those, so rather than having to send individual files to people. But I can come back to this if anyone has questions. So I've selected the local IFC, and if I go into the BIM and then I do a drop down here, I can choose the model I've selected, and it will now read that model file and open it up. Now, for the purposes of today and for simplicity and speed, I've chosen a very simple model. This is not limited to small models. Powerproject comes in two variants of a 32-bit version and a 64-bit version. So if you have those huge 60-story model files, you can actually bring those through and using the 64-bit version of Powerproject, which doesn't have any memory limitations. In here I have my Powerproject, I have my model file here, and then with simple navigation and my mouse I can left click and I can then pivot to the model and look around the model. Now what's unique here is Powerproject is the only planning tool that allows you to integrate 4D directly within the tool rather than having to integrate with other tools. We have links to Navisworks and Synchro, but we can actually have the model straight inside here, and it's designed from the planners and schedulers view, so they can bring in models and work quickly with those. So I can look around the model here. If I right click, I can move the model back and forth. I can move the window on here around. I can have it floating, I can have it at the top, I can have it at the bottom, I can have it back on the side. I've got my controls there, put those back. I can change the size, and whatever settings I set it to and save and close, next time I open it, it will bring back up in that format. So if you have multiple monitors, you can have it spread across multiple screens. So I've chosen my model here, I'm looking around. Now a few things about the model. As I'm looking around, I can obviously zoom in and zoom out. I can see that the model's in there. I can also go into a mode, what we call perspective mode. And here it's like a first person mode. So now I can move around and I can actually, if I wanted to, I can go into the building and I can look around and I can walk around the building quite happily and see whatever's in these rooms and there. So I can quite happily move between those two modes. I also have the ability to save a snapshot. And a snapshot allows me to remember where the camera is and what mode it is in. So if I save a snapshot in here, and I can then go back out of perspective mode, I can then on my model zoom out slightly, I can then save another snapshot. And now at any point, if I move around, I can say I want to go to that snapshot, or I want to jump back to that snapshot there. So I can quite happily do that. And if for any reason I get a little bit confused of where the model is, I can just reset the camera, which takes me back to my starting point. So at any point I can do that. So looking at the model itself, before we go any further, the model is come from an IFC. We never change the model inside Powerproject, but I'll show you some things we can do to enhance it. So I can select different items in there, and they will invert the color to show you which items I have selected. I can also bring up a properties pane. And the properties pane here allows me, when I select an item, I can see a number of properties that come up. Now these properties are the tags and items that have been set in the design package or CAD package. It's most important that it's tagged correctly and you understand what tagging you need. Unfortunately, what we found in real life, it doesn't always get tagged as you would want it to get tagged. So we do give you an option here that if I select that wall here, I have a name here for the wall, and that name is basic wall external 102 and so forth. If I don't like that name, I can actually change that name in here and call it external wall. So I can re-tag my model. Now, if I do this, I'm not actually changing the model. Powerproject is keeping track of the changes, and I can always right-click on it and reset it back to what it is. Pardon me. Now, you can't change all of the tags inside here, but there are a number of fields that you can change. So name and description are one. You can also change the building story. So if a model got exported and a component didn't get a story level, building story level assigned, you could assign that level to it. And also you can say if there's multiple buildings and they've been tagged, you can export those and the surfaces that they're attached to. What this allows you to do, as you'll see later on, is we can search for items inside the model using these properties. On top of the properties options we can look at, I can also look at a categories window. Now I'm just going to open it here, and these look at the tags that we have inside here, and I can see that I've got types and I've got all my different elements, building elements, and if I wanted to, I can turn off those and choose not to show my walls or not to show my windows in there, and I can just turn those off. I can turn off my slabs, so I can look at in more detail the actual building if I wanted to. On top of that, I can also, rather than doing it by building types and elements, I can actually look at this and say, okay, well, I'm not interested in seeing level 1. So I don't see level 1. I can turn off level ground floor, so you can see I can look at whatever area I want. I can combine the two by turning the slabs off there and then only having turned on level 1. And you can see then I can look at that particular level, and I can select items inside that and see their components. So quite happily I can look through their categories and easily just turn off and all back on again. So I can see everything. And I'll just do that, turn it back on. I'm just going to hide that down in there so we get rid of that out of the way. Now I'm looking at my model. A couple of things more I can do with this model. While I'm looking at the model, I can select items on the model and choose, just by right-clicking, I can hide those selected. So quite happily I could just interrogate the model and strip the model down to look inside and see what information there is. And obviously as I do this, and if I hide some of these, I can also control select and hide those in there. And if I do that, then at any point I can still go back and go to my snapshot there, and you can see I've looked there, and even through this view I can hide items, look at those beams, hide that, so I can look at those inside, I can hide those, so I can interrogate it as I look through, and then just pop back to my other snapshot to see from that point there. So very quickly move back and forth between those. I can also, if I go to show all items, I can turn it back on and see those. Now, once I've done that, looking at it a step further, and I'm just at the moment going to turn off my properties and just look at my model. One of the key features and key requests that we had from users is users wanted the ability to be able to take their model and very quickly create a 4D linked project from this. So what we've enabled people to do is people can select an item inside their model, hold the control key down, drag across onto their scheduled screen and let go, and it will create a task. Now the task is just a 5-day duration, but it uses the name of the activity I've dragged across, and now that is linked with that item. If I click away from both of those and just turn on the track selection, I can select the task, it selects the item in the model. If I click away, if I select the item in the model, it will select the task on screen. So very quickly I can create that. Now what I've actually done is if I just remove that from there, I could, if I wanted to, say this is ground floor and this is level 1, level 2, roof, and just create a number of tasks in there. And then what I can do is, so I may already have a pre-existing schedule that I have, and I can zoom in just a bit there. I can then choose the option by here. I can select one item in the roof. I can select the control key and highlight all of them, and then drag them all to the roof. Now, visually, I know that's happened by selecting that. It selects the roof. But actually, I can also go into a mode that we call unscheduled product mode. And when I do that, you can see that actually automatically it hides everything I've already allocated to my model. So the advantage with this is I could select part of the two walls at the bottom and say that's part of ground floor. And as I do that, my walls disappear because they've now been allocated. If I did those walls to level 2 and those ones to level level 2 goes on there. Let's overwrite that, and let's do level 1 like that. There we go. And then I can go around and I can say, well, that one goes to second level. And notice, because it knows I've already assigned something, it just asks me to update it. So very simply, I can drag and drop this information across to this. And as I do this, very quickly, ground floor, level 1, and level 2. Now I've stripped off all of those in there. Now that's my ground floor. I could actually say that's ground floor walls. I might choose to insert a bar and have ground floor slab, and in there, and I can choose, and again, while I'm looking at this mode, I can still, if I don't want to see that surface, I can highlight the surface and just hide that out of the way, select the slab and drag that to the task. I'll drag that one as well there as well for this purposes. So I have that. Let's hide that out of the way. So you can see I've done that one. I can do this slab here, and that goes to level 1. And if I do this one here, I go to level 2. And if I do this one here, that goes to roof. So very quickly, I've allocated those, and I'll need to do my columns and structure as well as I can go through, but doing it in just the same way. Now, obviously, this is very simple at this point, just to show you the point, but by the fact is I've drawn these, I can highlight these now, I can link these together, reschedule, and there is my activities. If I went into my BIM side, in here I can say show all, so I see my whole project. Just go into my settings briefly and just set this to 10 seconds, and I'll talk about this a bit later. But very quickly now, when I press play, you can see it runs them and simulates that. And if I do tracking bar charts, you can see what is playing as it goes. Now that's fine. I've linked all the walls to the ground floor walls, all first floor walls to this task. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop that. I'm just going to go back into my properties in here. So I'm just going to choose my properties window up again for a moment. What I have the ability to do is I can select this wall, and because at the moment all the walls at the ground floor get built at the same time. But in here I can now say, well, actually that wall is number 1, that wall is number 2, that wall is number 3, and that wall is number 4. I can do the same thing with that one, so that's going to be 4 as well. That's going to be 4. So I'm deciding the build order of these walls now, even though they're all allocated to the same task. So that gives me the ability to control the sequence of build for the activities. So in here I'm just going to go around very quickly, as you see. And obviously I'm doing this manually just at the moment, but I will show other ways as we go through. That's one. Okay, so now I've done that, if I now look at my model again, stop that and press play, now as it gets built, you can see the build sequence of the walls is a sequence that I've defined. And I could split the roof as well to do that as well. So I can set that, so if I put the columns in, I can set the order of the columns, the piling, I can set the order of the piling that goes in. So very simply, if I press stop, in here I can insert a line and say piling, link that into the project, so very quickly add something in, and then I can select all of these, and then I can just drag those to this task and add there. But while I've got these selected, I can also right click on them and say set build order, and I can do it sequential from number 1. By doing that, now what I can do is if I do a reschedule in there, I can then say, okay, if I now play this from my BIM side, you see you have the sequence of columns going in, then the walls go in a sequence that they're being built in, and so forth. Now obviously I'd have the still frame added to that before that, but it just gives you the principle that very quickly you can set this and put this in. Now I'm just going to stop that for a moment. I can also now, one of the things that people look at when they've got their 3D models, classically is the slabs. So if I highlight this slab here, this slab here is one object as from the designer and the CAD team, but actually it's not going to be put down in one. We might do it in a number of pours. So again, what we can do inside here from, again, a scheduler's view, is we can right click on these and I can say split products. Now we've got 2 ways of splitting, and I'll talk about those in a moment, but the first way is splitting by 2 axes at a time, or up to 2 axes at a time. So if I did 2 directions, I can choose the number of cuts. I can keep them equal, or I can specify the ways, and I can preview those to see how many cuts I'm going to make in there. And when I do that, click on OK, it asks me to update my selection because I've already allocated that slab to something. So I say update. So now by doing that in here, what I can do, if I click away, that's already allocated to that task still. If I press play, it puts in my columns, and you can see now it builds in sequence the different pours. So very quickly, I can see those happening. And I can do that with all of my slabs. So if I stop that for a moment, and again in here very simply, if I just hide those, and I just select all of my slabs in one go, and then I can say right click and say split products, do it by 2 directions, and I'm going to do 2 cuts by 2 cuts. Actually I'm going to do 3 by 3. I'm going to let it set the build order for me, so that's how it's going to look. Click on OK, update the relevant settings, and now I've done that. When I press play, I start running the sequence, and you can see the slabs now get built inside there. So very quickly I can put the model together and sequence it. Now the cuts I've just made, I've made inside Powerproject. They do not have to stay, I can remove them, but I haven't actually modified the IFC. The IFC is still just one single slab for each of those. Powerproject gives me the ability to do it as I want to do it, and I can split walls, I can split any objects I want. So saying that as well, the other way of splitting is if I wanted to, I could select, I'll just bring it up on screen, I could select that surface, and that may be a large slab I was having on my model. I could select that, right click on it, and I can choose to split this product by other products. So in here, I can say I'm going to choose other products, and on my model I select that wall there, and I also move across and select that wall there. So now I've got those two walls selected, and I can just choose select, it shows it, I can show those, and then what I can do here is I can then choose to split, and so it's now split along those two objects. The advantage of this is if you have a model that hasn't been split by floor, you could select the floor, you could select the walls, and then you could split by the slabs to give you each level. And you could do that with any of the objects. And then each of those objects, so now I've split this, each of these objects, I could assign that one to a task here, that one to a task here, and that one to a task here. Now I can also, with my splits, I can take any item that I've split in here and choose to split that again. So I can split that again if I wanted to into 3 parts, or 3 splits, which give me 4 parts. If I clicked on OK, it lets me update because I've assigned that. But then I might decide that actually those 2 items there are one, so I can actually merge those products together. And I'd ask me to update. So it keeps track of all of this as I do this. So now if I just link those together and just do a links between those, and for this purposes I'm just going to link that to, let's do there, just do some overlap on it, and in there. So now I've got that. When I go to my BIM side, I can run play, and now I have multiple things happening, slabs and piles going in, and then I have the walls going over, and so forth. So very quickly I can pull this together, and that's literally just taking the model and dragging and dropping to either an existing project or a new project in there. So that's very simply the first part to look at how we can do this. I'm not going to continue this model at the moment. I will use the same model but elsewhere. What I can actually do as well, when I select an item in here, we get a number of properties in here, and depends, it might have values and quantities and volumes if those have been exported with the model, and it's all dependent on what gets exported through. Now when you're looking at these, you might want some information that's not already planned there. So what we can do is we can go up to here and go to custom properties. I can click on add. So it may be that I want to reference different walls by the elevation they're on. So I can create a property called elevation and close that down, and I now have here a property against this model called elevation. Now I can then select all of the east facing walls and say east. I could select all of the south side ones and say south, and so forth. Now when I look at those, they have their own property. Now this property doesn't exist inside the model, but this property exists inside this Powerproject file. If I have an additional revision of the model, someone gives me a new version, and I've done lots of splits, custom properties, change the names, all I need to do is bring it in as a revision to this model by just going to the model properties and open the revision, and then right click on the model or right click on the screen and choose to copy all the split and custom properties to an additional revision. So I can do that or not to do that. So I can control each model could have different revision, each revision could have different splits if I wanted it to. So I can quite happily move across there. Now, moving forward here slightly, I've obviously gone through selecting items, dragging them and dropping them. I now run a timeline that shows me where it is so far. And when I run that timeline, it runs it from the beginning to the end of the project. But I can also, in its settings, I can run it to a specific date. And one of those dates could be, rather than a specific date, could be my current progress period. So we'll always run up to what it should be looking like when I'm playing it. I can also drag this across to say, well, that's where it should be in there. And if I do that, or I could do a drop down on the date and say, well, what does it look like by the 3rd? Well, that's what it should look like by the 3rd, and you can see that. Now, obviously, we can in here, we can save an image, which this will allow me to export to a picture file that I can choose, but which is very good for people to look at, and you see a lot of it when you go around to see people's offices. But also what we can do is we've had this option to save as O2C. O2C is a free driver that can be downloaded for Windows. If I click on Save as O2C here, and I save it to my desktop, and I call it my Demo 1 in there, and then I go to my desktop. In there, I have Demo 1 on there as an O2C file, very small file, and it opens in this O2C viewer, which gets installed on your machine when you download the driver. It means I can send, a client or a subcontractor can install this, and I can now send this to them, this O2C file. And the advantage and the difference between this and a normal 3D model viewer is this only exports what it currently looks like in the Power Project. So if this is where we should be up to, this is what I send. People can look around this, people can go into it in there and have a look and see where they should be, and they can look around inside there. There's no details in it, but it allows them to visually explore that. So I'll come back out of that. So I can view those together as I want to there. Now, up until now, I've just been doing drags and drops all the time to my model, from my model to my project, and then at any stage, when I press stop, I can highlight any number of tasks on screen, and I can go to hide show and say show only selected, and that will only show the selected items in there. And I could also export that as an O2C. So I could select just one subcontractor's work. So if someone's doing that, that, and that, and I could say show only selected. And that's the work they're working on. I could export that to O2C so they can see everything that they're working on in the model. So I can go back and show all in there. So setting that up and finding those, dragging those items is very quick and easy. But there is a way of configuring the system to allow you to automatically find the information without dragging and dropping it across. So what we have inside Power Project, if I just go into this Library Explorer, this allows me to find some more details inside this particular project, and I can go into IFC Product Searches. So what I can do in here is I can right-click and I can say New IFC Product Search, and inside here, once I do this, I can say, let's just say ground floor walls. So I create a item in here called ground floor walls. I can go into the properties of that, and now inside here under search criteria I can specify criteria to find items inside the model. So this becomes really useful, especially once, if you're getting models in standard format with standard tagging, you can actually show this information. So in here I'm going to say, okay, let's find, and here it lists all the different properties for the different items in the model. So let's say IFC entity, and we're going to say that equals, we can say does not equal, or contains, or does not contain a certain value. Now I can type the value in, or a number of these can be predefined and have a drop down. So in here I can say everything that is an IFC wall standard case, which is all the walls. And again, if I wanted to know what I'm looking for, by selecting this, I can see the entities and all the properties as I'm working on it. Now I'm working on one screen, you might be working on several. Just by selecting that and going to products, that has now found every wall in the model. I don't want every wall, so I can click on add, and I can now say I want it by location as well, but equals and I can say ground level. And now when I go to products, I'm only finding my ground level walls. But notice here it's picking up external and internal walls because they've been tagged in different ways. So I could also add in here and say with name that contains external. And just by doing that, now I only have the external walls. And if I select all the items in there, it finds all of those automatically in my model. So hopefully you can see there very quickly by using searches, I can get to the information and highlight the items in the model. The important thing to understand is that these searches I've just set up here can be pre-set up in your Powerproject template file. So you could have ground floor, first floor, second floor, all the way up to 100 floors, walls, columns, beams, whatever you want to set up in there to extract it. Someone gives you a model, you drop in, it automatically dissects the model and extracts that information, and leaving you with only items in the model that haven't yet been assigned. And so very quickly you can do that in there. So I can just quickly do this one. Now I've done this one, I could copy that and I could say, oh, let's say ground floor columns. I could go in there and I can say, rather than saying all standard case, I could say columns, and I possibly don't need to have the name because they're not walls in there. And now that finds all my ground floor columns in there. And once I've got those, these can be then allocated to my project. Now, going back here, so these will appear over here, like so, and I can see all of those. So now what I can do is, if I just in here, I'm just actually going to go and switch to a different project, which is, actually I don't know, I should be able to just do it here, just close this down, and open up here. And this one's using the same model as we had before. It's got properties of everything the same, but what I'm going to do over here is I've already created in this project a number of IFC searches, and at each of these, if I look at ground floor columns, if I go into there and go to properties, you can see in there I'm looking for particular types of columns. So if I wanted to, over in my model, I could hide all, and then over here I could select maybe my still columns there, still columns there, still columns there, right click on that and say show in viewer. There are my columns that I've just selected, and you can see they're the different levels that go through. If I go and show all, I can also in my model say go to the unassigned product mode, and that shows me everything that I haven't accounted for in my searches. So very quickly I can see that it's got my systems and some little beading around the side. So I can then account for that. But basically someone could have given me this model and these searches just automatically find all the components. So you say that we've now created this as a starting point. One of the things I can look at is in my IFC Product Searches inside Powerproject is each of these items is given a sort order in there, so you can define when these are going to happen and the order these are going to happen in, and these have been defined already, and this come from the template. So what I can do, if I just turn that off for a moment, I can, in this Product Searches down the side, I can select the first one, I can select the last one, I can right click, and if I wanted to, because I could drag these across, or if I have no tasks, I can say create tasks. So that creates a task for everyone. I highlight that and say that one, 1 to 2, 2 to roof, and then roof. If I highlight those and say that I want to make those into a summary in there, and then I might choose to let's just make that one not a summary. Let's make not a task in there, and then I can highlight those, 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 and in there have those highlighted, and then choose to enter home. I can indent those into the summaries, I can link those together, and then I can link that to that. And obviously I'm not changing any durations, I would then modify durations, reschedule my project, and there is my project schedule for my model, automatically linked using the searches that already existed. Now obviously if I then go into the BIM tab, settings, just made sure this was like 10 seconds or so, just a quick simulation, click on play, and you can see now here that it's running through, building my model up, and literally less than 5 minutes I've created a linked 4D simulation with my model. So I can do that, and if I wanted to, you know, set all, right click, and I say set build order sequential for 1. So we'll wait for that to just catch up. Now if I run the simulation, obviously I need to play with the sequence in there, but you get to see the point very quickly. It gets created, and I've given it some more sequence of build rather than just blocks just happening. Now also, as I'm looking at my model, if I don't like the colors in there, I can also go to model properties and do color override. I can make the background a different color. I've already in here said the slab roof is going to be this color. If I don't want it to be that color, I can make the roof that color. I can make the walls that color. So I can really change it to be as pleasant or not as I want. And then I can also make them in my model overrides. I can go into my color overrides. I can change, make them transparent or not. So I can have that as a, let's have that as a grey slab in there. So that's my building now. When I press stop and play, it runs through. Obviously now it's not transparent, I can't see through it, but you can see it builds up very quickly and allows me to see this information as I'm building. So hopefully that makes sense so far. As I say, it's a little bit of a whirlwind tour of this, but allows me to control what I'm doing. Now, one of the things I can also do here is inside Powerproject standard functionality, I can create a baseline of my project, so a snapshot of where it is, and I can create as many of those as I want. I'm going to call this one planned, and it just creates a baseline for me. And as you'll see on screen, and I'll just turn off the critical path at the moment to see that you can see on there that you have the project in there, and if I just turn off those holidays, you can see my project and my baseline underneath. Now if I have a delay on my project, so let's say early on we have a bit of a delay in there, and I then reschedule my project, you can see that I now have an impact on my project, and I can have a further delay there. I can choose to bring it back, but I just want to show a delay here at the moment, and there. And now once I've done that, in my BIM tab, I'll take the track off and track selections off. I'm going to go into settings, and I can choose to simulate the live dates, but highlighting the baseline differences, so where there's problems. So I do that, and now when I run play, everything gets built. But as you notice, some of the things now are appearing in red as they're being built. They are the late items that are being built. So I can then highlight those as differences. And this is quite good in the sense, you know, at any point I can play back to a point and see where it was, and you see that wall there is late to being built. And if I track the selection across, tracking bar chart, you can see what items they were and so forth. And that's one way to do it. But what I'm going to do is we have a feature in Powerproject BIM now that allows us to open a comparison window. And that window allows me to move back to the same point. But now in my settings, I can simulate my live window, my live project in my live model, and I can simulate my baseline inside my comparison window. I'm just going to change this to about 20 seconds now. And so by doing that, if I just turn those off for a moment and press play, it will play through. And as it plays through, one is going against the baseline, one is going against the project. So you can now start to see that if I just pause that, let's just go back slightly. So you can see there that actually we are ahead of schedule, we're behind schedule at this point looking at our model. So very quickly we can see this information and bring this information together. So that allows us to do that. Now we also have the ability in here to create what we call flypaths. And I'm just going to turn the comparison window off for a moment and show that. And by the way, the comparison window, I don't have to simulate against the baseline. I could have it looking at a different view of my model as I'm building. So in here I can go for flypaths, and what I can say in my flypaths, I can create a new flypath, and this allows me to animate the camera. So I might say here that I want to have my camera starting off like this, and I can then click in here as this is my new flypath. I can click on add an item, and I can specify what date this camera is at this point. That's useful, but actually it's possibly more useful, if I go into my model and get my project, it's more useful to say that actually that's going to be relative to a start of a task. I can select which task and say set task and update viewpoint. So now when it starts this task here, it's going to have this camera viewpoint here. I'm then going to move under here, move over to here, and I'm going to say we're going to add another viewpoint here. And actually, by the time I'm starting to do my pile caps in here, and piles, so piles, I want that as a task start, and I want to set task, update viewpoint. I can then move over here and say at this point I want to click add, and I want to do that as a task start, and I want that to be down at this point here. And I can do set task, update viewpoint. Now, close on that, make sure the new flypath is selected, and now when I press play, it will animate the sequence so I can see things being built. And because it's linked to tasks, if the tasks get delayed, I can see that happening. Once I've created those, I also then have the ability to create a video. So I can export the information out to a video using, depending on what codec that are installed on your machine, and obviously the resolution you want to choose. When you export it out, you can do the IFC model, or you can do the IFC model and the comparison window. So you have the two windows side by side as you work. So I'm just going to close on that in there. So that's very briefly going over most of those functionalities. Now, to really take a step further and just talk about, when we're talking about BIM, one of the things with BIM is that you don't get a single model, you get multiple models. So if I just close this, and then if I open up and create a new project, and so let's call it group 1.1. Inside here I can go to my configuration. I can choose to select a new model, and if I go into my simple group models, I have my office block, but I have it broken down by architectural, and I select a new one and I have it broken down by structural. I can also then create a new group model called group, and I can add in the models from there. It's asking if I want to use the override colors that I've already set up. So I now have my architectural and I have my structural in there. OK on that, And when I go to BIM, I now open up my model. I can open up, if I wanted to, my structural only model. I could open up my architectural only, like so. Or if I wanted to, I could open up my group model that opens both of them up at the same time, which means when I look at my categories, I can turn off the different models. When I do my searches and create my searches, I can specify which model I'm looking at for it to come from. So this becomes very powerful. So depending if you could bring in a fully federated model if you wanted to allow you to see how it brings together. Now, one thing just to show you here, obviously I've been using just a very simple model. Here's a bit more of a complex model that we've got. And in here, we can see we've got this complex model in here. I can now choose in here, if I turn on my categories, I can see my different models. And in here, I've got an architectural, structural, and an ME model. I can turn off my architectural model. I could turn off my structural model. And I can now see all the detail that I've got from my M&E model inside there. I can then turn on my structure if I want to turn M&E off and just see the structural side, and I can do all of them on if I wanted to. So again, this is a much larger file, but we can take much bigger files than this in here. It's just this allows you to see, and again in here we could create flypaths. I haven't created a flypath at this point, but I have created a project that I've linked it to, and I've started doing that. And if I run the timeline now, you can see that we start off with our piles. Our piles get built in a sequence and order that we've defined. So we've only set one set of piling, but we've set the order. The pile caps then go on in the order that we want them to go in. And then once we've done that, we start having the frame being fitted and the foundation work on those, and then the columns on the next floors. And as you do that, you can see, we can see that happening there. I can, if I wanted to, if I stop that and apply a flypath, as I have a very simple one here now, and I'm just going to set this to about 25 seconds, and in there, and when I now press play, you can see it moves around and allows me to see these moving around as it builds up. And again, I can export this as a video and give this as an AVI to someone so they can then play this on the machine without using this. Like so. And again, at any time, if I say I did stop that, I could just say drag that or type a date in and say where does it look, where will I be at this point in here. I could then export that to O2C, send that to someone, send it as a picture, send them the project schedule, have that in, but because it's linked all the time, there's no time you need to go and resynchronize between them. It's always live. You can do 4D simulation on a weekly basis to clients. And just recapping on here, I've used local IFCs in this side. I could, if I wanted to, open out a LeetCode BIM cloud in here. And this will allow me to store my models if I wanted to in here. And when you buy and purchase the Asta Powerproject BIM module, you get access to the cloud here. And here I've got my sample models in here, and I can upload models into this. I can grant access to other users. You don't need us to do that. We make you an admin of your BIM cloud account, and they can upload models. And when they upload a model, so if I do this simple house and I look at the properties, you can't see the 3D model inside here. It's just a storage, but you can look at its objects in there, so you can see what it's got made up. And you can also add in revisions. So you might give this to your CAD architects and designers, and they could just go in and upload a new revision of the model to you. And if you're then linked down, you can just manage your revisions through Powerproject. It's in there. So that's very quickly like a whirlwind view of Asta Powerproject BIM. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that for me.
Well, we're waiting for the questions before. Let's see if there are any questions. Dear attendees, do you have any questions? Okay, I think probably they'll write an email if they will have any questions. By the way, we have recorded this webinar. We'll be sending the recording to the emails which you have entered during the registration. Okay, we have one question, Chris, from Attila, and I'm not sure whether it's a female or male, so sorry in advance. What more could Asta provide? What we cannot get from the Navish work? So this is the question.
Okay, so where we come from the Powerproject side is that we make it simple. There is no requirement to link to any external. It's a very quick and easy way to link your project in there. Where Navisworks comes much more from a, clash detection. We don't see it as replacing the Navisworks side, but this is where every scheduler could have BIM and they wouldn't have to worry, have a Navisworks expert linking it across and relinking it once projects change and items change. It will be something they could do direct themselves and very quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question from Mr. Muhammad. Yes, can it link to Primavera? Yes.
Yes, you can import XER files.
Exactly. Another question from G. He has a project in Qatar and he is asking whether we have a local contact in this country. I can answer it. Yes, we have a local contact. They call the CMCS Qatar. We'll be sending you the information. We'll be forwarding them your email and they will get in touch with you today. Okay, another question is, can we have a direct link in Asta with the planning such as Primavera MS project? I think yes, we can.
Well, you can in Powerproject, because Powerproject has a full capable scheduling tool that does pretty well, that will do everything that Project and Primavera can do and P6 can do functionality wise. You can import their files and you can export from Powerproject to those files.
Great, thank you. Also, we had request, what is the price for this module? I think Mr. Muhammad will be forwarding you to the local representative of ours, and they will get in touch with you and provide the full information. Okay, another question we had, whether we can only input the IFC format and can Asta edit the IFC file.
No, so we only use IFCs purely because it's a common format for models rather than specific to each CAD program. And no, the IFC we never change the IFC. We make changes inside Powerproject, but the true IFC model stays as it is.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, so if we'll have any other more questions, I will be answering by email. If you request more detailed session, please let us know. We'll have a more detailed session regarding your requirements. Okay, Chris, I would like to thank you very much. We really appreciate your help. It was a great
problem. Thank you very much.
It was a great presentation. I hope to see you soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too.